Training camp is underway. Preseason starts this weekend. You're going to want to be up to date on everything with the Montreal Canadiens, and that's what we're here for. But also, there's the Hockey Inside Out newsletter. Go to montrealgazette.com/newsletters to check out the newly revamped Hockey Inside Out newsletter that has everything you need to know from all the people you'd like to read and consume content from on the Montreal Canadiens. So montrealgazette.com/newsletters and download the Hockey Inside Out newsletter. And with that, let's do that hockey. Welcome to Hockey Inside Out. I am Julian McKenzie with the panelists today, Stu Cowan of the Montreal Gazette, Jessica Rusnak of CBC Daybreak Montreal, and Stanley Cup champion and former assistant coach Rick Green. We got to delve into a whole bunch of different topics. Training camp is underway. There are already some injuries to talk about with Mike Hoffman and Carey Price. We'll get to those guys in a second. But we have to talk about Jonathan Drouin. Earlier this week, he took to both RDS and TVA to delve into the anxiety issues that have been plaguing him throughout much of last season, and that caused him to take a leave of absence from the team, even missing their Stanley Cup final run, which of course culminated in a Stanley Cup final appearance. I'm just curious now that Jonathan Drouin is back in the fold with the Montreal Canadiens. What are we going to get in this player in terms of us as media seeing him and the Canadiens obviously having him in their lineup? Like, what are the Canadiens going to get in a guy who has not played in a considerable amount of time?
Well, I think, there is that possibility that he will be rusty, that he had all this time off from hockey. But I think, it's like any other player. They're professional athletes. They've been working out in the gym. They've been skating. They've been, trying hard to stay as in shape and as in game ready as possible. And I think that for Jonathan Drouin, he is very motivated to go back with the team. I think it's amazing that he was able to sit down and share his story, not just with one journalist, but with two journalists, and just opening up about anxiety and insomnia and how it affects professional athletes. And I think this new generation is really trying to change the culture when it comes to mental health and athletes, that you don't have to always be so mentally strong, that you can say, wait a second, I need to take a break. I need to focus on my mental health the same way I need to focus on, fixing my broken arm. That's the same kind of thing. It's not easy to step away. As you mentioned, they made it all the way to the Stanley Cup finals and he was watching from home. But you're seeing other athletes like Simone Biles at the Olympics, the biggest moment there, being able to step away and refocus her mental health. And I think it's great that he did that. And I think he's really looking forward to now moving on, and he has the tools that he needs to help when it comes to his anxiety and insomnia.
And I think obviously, it's a bonus having him back. The kid is going to feel an awful lot of pressure, to perform. We mustn't forget, that this is a guy that hasn't scored a lot of goals, 40 goals, I think, in 229 games with the Habs. The expectations, I hope, are not too high on him, coming in and lighting it up. But I think that, it's going to be really important for him to have a good start, build his confidence. And I think it's really going to be important to put him with some good combination and good, good players to allow him to succeed. And I think there will be some experiments going on. I know everybody talks about him not being the type of centerman that you would like to have, but I don't think you should, cross that off a possibility, because it does give him a little more freedom to be creative, which is more his forte, if you will, of, making plays versus scoring goals. But I'm just hopeful that the kid can handle himself well and gets off to a really good, strong start and build some good confidence that was missing in his game, before he left.
Well, anyone who's ever dealt with anxiety or knows someone who has, I know someone close to me who deals with it. It's a horrible thing, and it can be paralyzing. And it became paralyzing for Jonathan Drouin. For him to step away from the Canadiens could not have been an easy decision for him. He said he's happy with the decision he made. He got the help he needed. He said he'd been dealing with anxiety for years, didn't know exactly what it was. As Rick said, hopefully now he has a better grasp on it. It's not going to be easy for him moving forward, It's not like people are going to all of a sudden stop criticizing him if he plays poorly. That's part of our job as the media when covering professional athletes. It's part of being a professional athlete. You're in the spotlight and your performance is judged and criticized or praised. You're playing well. So it's not going to be any easier from going forward. I think what's really going to help him, Dominic Ducharme, who was his junior coach in Halifax, of course, they won a Memorial Cup together. He knows Jonathan really well. He likes Jonathan. I think he's going to give him every opportunity to succeed. As Rick was saying, Drouin's he's never really been a big goal scorer. He's more of a playmaker. As I wrote in a column setting up the training camp, I'd be interesting to see Drouin on a line with Christian Dvorak and Brendan Gallagher. When Dvorak signed with the Canadiens, or was acquired by the Canadiens, I should say, he said he performs at his best when he has a winger who likes to carry the puck. Well, that's Jonathan Drouin. And Brendan Gallagher is a goal scorer. So I think those three guys together could work well as a line. And again, I think Dominic Ducharme gave Jonathan Drouin every chance to succeed when he took over from Claude Julien as head coach. It didn't work out. Now we know that Drouin was dealing with the off-ice issues that he was, and hopefully he can get over that. Hopefully it's behind him now, and he's going to be motivated to play. There's no doubt about that. It's not going to be easy for him. I like Jonathan Drouin, dealing with him in the locker room. I'm sure, Jess, you can say the same. He's a friendly, happy guy. Comes across that way anyway, but you never know what happens when people go back home behind closed doors. So obviously he was dealing with this issue. I wish Jonathan Drouin all the best moving forward. Hopefully this works out for him. And for the Canadiens, hopefully he can be the player that Marc Bergevin thought he was getting or hoped he was getting when he made that trade with Tampa Bay.
Any other general takeaways from the fact that Jonathan Drouin chose to divulge his issues through these TV specials on LDS and TVA, which I thought was really interesting that he would go that route as opposed to, like a Zoom call or general scrum with Montreal media. He opted to go the exclusive route with the two biggest sports outlets in our province in Quebec. Any other general takeaways on the fact that he chose to go to the TV route to divulge his anxieties this way?
Well, it's also go ahead, Jess. Sorry.
I think it was just, Chantal Machabé has covered the team for a long time. He knows her well, Renaud Lavoie as well. So I think for him, it was just the better way to share such a personal story and what he went through with two journalists that he trusts, rather than in a Zoom call where it might be a name that he's not familiar with. It's different than being in a scrum where you're used to seeing these faces all the time. And perhaps he thought this is the best way to maybe help someone else who's feeling the same way as him, that he said for years he didn't really know what was going on. And maybe someone who was watching it says this story really relates to me, and I'm a young person, and if he's willing or to share his story, then maybe I should go and take the same steps that he has.
Well, the Canadiens like to try and control the media message as much as they can, and the two networks who have broadcast deals or partners with the Canadiens, so it's not surprising that those are the two networks he would go with. I don't know if the Canadiens asked to see the questions or know what the questions are going to be like in advance. It wouldn't shock me if that did happen, but I think it made sense for Drouin to do it this way because it's out there, and now when training camp starts, he's answered the questions, and they can say, okay, he's already talked about that. He's not going to talk about it anymore, so it doesn't drag on. So I think in that side, it was a smart decision by Drouin, and maybe his agent Alan Walsh involved with the Canadiens also. I think it was a smart decision for them to make, but it's not surprising that those are the two networks that carried the conferences.
And, Jonathan deserves a lot of credit and courage for coming forward and clearing the air. There was lots of speculation on, oh boy, maybe he's in rehab, maybe he has this, maybe he has that. So, there was a lot of talk that was going on behind the scenes that he probably heard bits and pieces of, and he wanted just to let everybody know, listen, I had this issue with anxiety. I've had it before. I addressed it. I got professional help. And now I want to put it behind me, and I want to enjoy my life and experience with the Montreal Canadiens. And I'm really hopeful that he's back, and he's going to do his very best to contribute and help a team win. And I'm just really thrilled to hear the fact that he's addressed it. He's let everybody know what his situation was, and now let this kid move forward and hopefully have some success.
Very well said. And let this be a lesson to everyone. You never really know what anyone is going through. And just, I guess, be kind, I guess. That's as best as I can put it.
Well,
let's move to question. Oh, go ahead.
Two examples. Robin Williams and Anthony Bourdain are two guys that seem to own the world, right? And look what happened with them. So you say mental issues. This shines a spotlight, and hopefully it'll help some other NHL players moving forward who might be less reluctant now to come forward and say, look, I got a problem. I need some help.
And, I have to speak from my experience coming from the Washington as nobodies to the Montreal Canadiens. The expectations when Ryan Walter and I came here was, okay, it's not a question of when the playoffs are going to happen. It's when the Stanley Cup is coming. And we felt that pressure. And if you are not able to handle it, it can eat away at you. And it was a tough enough scenario for us with the high expectations. And then you take a local kid like Jonathan, who, has everybody watching him, and he has this anxiety issue. It's not easy. So we're very hopeful that he'll be able to handle it and do his thing.
Yeah, I've had people emailing me saying, look at Guy Lafleur and Jacques Lemaire and Serge Savard and all these other French players who dealt with it. But it was a different time, man. Like, there was no social media. There was no 24/7 sports channels or radio channels. Every game wasn't on TV. It's a whole new world out there for these guys right now.
And Stu didn't even mention social media. I mean, Ryan and Rick, when they came to Montreal Canadiens, probably didn't have to worry about some random Twitter user being all like, oh, we acquired these two guys, writing a whole set of comments. Imagine what a guy like Jonathan Drouin might have seen if he was on social media or cared to follow social media. Imagine what that guy might have seen during his time as a Montreal Canadien. We could do a whole episode on the mental health of players and what it's like to just try to play in this city like Montreal. But I know we do have other questions we have to get to on this week's episode here. And as we're recording right now, training camp is underway for the Montreal Canadiens, and already we have a list of names considered among the walking wounded, and no name bigger than that of Carey Price. We all know about the surgeries that he's had to have over the offseason, to his knee. Well, sorry, his hip, not to his knee, but his knee was also hurt. And now we're hearing that it's very likely we might not see him skate during training camp. It looked as if at first that there was a chance Carey Price might be available for at least the first week of the Montreal Canadiens season. But if he's likely not to skate during training camp, when are we going to see Carey Price in action?
This is tough news to hear off the get-go, especially when, some of the information that came out earlier on in the year was everything went well, surgeries are good, he's ahead of schedule, he'll be there in training camp. He did get on the ice and did some small work, if you will, on flexibility and movement. And then all of a sudden, bang, you get this announcement that he's going to miss all of training camp. But we've seen in the past that some of their predictions are really not that accurate. But when you get a situation where you have some surgery, which hasn't been that long ago, and you're in a position like that where obviously hip and knee are a critical part of your success in how you play the game, I'm a little concerned. Hopefully we're not overreacting on this. Hopefully that this type of move is one to allow him a little more time to get him where he should be, so that he's able to start the season on a good note.
I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. When this first when the Canadiens first announced that Price was going to be ready for the season, I wrote, the Canadiens have never been right when it comes to predicting when Carey Price will come back from an injury, and I'll believe it when I see it. It's not a shock. A torn meniscus that was operated on, the hip issue he dealt with also. He's 34 years old. There's a lot of wear and tear on his body. You look at Shea Weber, who doesn't look like he's going to finish that contract that he has because of injuries, and I'd be shocked if Carey Price is able to play until the end of his contract either, with all the injuries he's dealt with. So I'm not surprised. He's not going to be at training camp. He's obviously not going to start the season. He's not going to be at training camp at all. You have to figure he's at least 2 weeks, if not a month into the season before we see him play. He's not going to not have training camp, then all of a sudden just jump on the ice and play in a game. So, Jake Allen showed last year he's a competent backup, but he also showed that, when he was the number one guy after Price went down, he sort of got worn down and his game suffered. So this is a huge blow for the Canadiens. I mean, no Shea Weber, no Carey Price to start the season. it's going to be a big blow for them as far as getting off to a good start. So again, I'm not shocked, but the Canadiens are smart. I mean, don't rush him. Make sure he's 100% ready before you put him back on the ice, because they're going to need Carey Price again this season. The Canadiens once again will go as far as he can take them.
I just don't understand why the Canadiens don't just say Carey Price will be back before Christmas. And then if he does come back end of October, early November, everyone's happy about it, instead of saying he'll be ready for the beginning of the season. And then we get here on September 23rd or whatever the date is today, and he's not ready to go. But that being said, they are in a better situation than they have been in the past, because they do have Jake Allen. In the past, when Carey Price has been hurt, they haven't had a reliable backup goaltender. So it is great that he wasn't scooped up in the expansion draft. So we'll see what he's able to do beginning of the season, see if he's able to, if that is the case, that Carey Price is not ready to go when October 13th rolls around. But it's definitely concerning news for the Montreal Canadiens.
And as far as I'm not announcing, I mean, you got to remember it's a business too. They're selling tickets and whatnot, and they're hoping their number one, or what arguably the number one star is going to be on the ice, but now he's not. But it's again, there's a lot of wear and tear on that body, and Carey Price is a big man for a goalie, and dropping down to their knees all the time, it's wear and tear, and the hip issue too, which didn't need to be operated on, but it's still there, I would think. It's going to be interesting moving forward to see how many games Carey Price ends up playing this season.
And really, the bottom line for me is training camp, is it going to make a difference in how Carey Price performs? I'm not sure about that. But the main point here is get himself healthy. If it takes him the whole training camp to get healthy, or the best he can be, then so be it. The other guys can have their opportunity to step in there, play some games, and Carey can get himself ready for the start of the season, which is obviously the most important part of the year. So it's not good news. But hopefully, they're going to handle it in such a way that he's going to put this injury stuff behind him and perform up to the way he did last year in the playoffs.
And also with Hoffman missing the whole training camp, he was a key pickup for them. A guy who was supposed to help them on the power play and bring some offense to the team. So it's not, as Rick said, not a good way to start training camp.
Yeah, not the best way. Mike Hoffman, by the way, with a lower body injury. I think I'm correct with that. And he's also likely to not skate during training camp. One silver lining in all of this, if the Canadiens are in a position where they have to start with Jake Allen. Stu, you mentioned the fact that Jake Allen at one point in last season, you totally got worn down. We have to remember the 56-game schedule, a condensed schedule, a lot of games being played in an only certain amount of days. And I think that kind of helped with the wear and tear on not just Jake Allen, but a lot of players. An 82-game season, I'm not saying Jake Allen's going to be the guy for the entire season, obviously, but hopefully the way that the schedule is kind of laid out will help him out in terms of spaces in between games if it gets to a point where his load, at least at the beginning of the season, will be a little heavier than anticipated. So if Jake Allen happens to be the guy, I guess the number 2 guy for him might end up being a Caden Primo, unless I'm trying to remember the goaltending depth off the top of my head. That's wild. I haven't had to think about the Montreal Canadiens goaltending depth in months. But yeah, I would imagine Caden Primo might actually have to come up, or some other goaltender might have to come in and fill in as a number 3, I guess. But that remains to be seen. Also, Stu, a question for you. Who are you more likely to trust? The Canadiens when it comes to determining when Carey Price will play, or whoever tells the weather on television?
Well, when you were telling the weather on television, I always trusted you, Julian.
I was not trying to fish a compliment for myself. I was actually hoping you're going to roast weather people. Yes. Anyway.
But you're right. The thing with Jake Allen, too, at least now going into training camp, he knows he's going to be the number 1 guy when the season starts, right? So he can prepare himself for that. And you're absolutely correct, Julian. That schedule last year was crazy. The other thing, though, Caden Primo looked terrible when he got called up last season with the Canadiens. So you got to wonder if Marc Bergevin is maybe looking around now to see if there's another proven NHL goalie available that he might want to pick up to be a backup to start the season.
So I saw that this next question was going to be something we were going to tackle in this episode. So I tried to write some potential answers in this trusty little notebook that I have. I won't say which company this is from because I don't work for them anymore. But thanks for the notebooks. I got a bunch of them. Anyway, top 6 defensemen for the Montreal Canadiens. There could only really be 6 and then an extra defenseman. And I figured, okay, Jeff Petry's going to be there. Joel Edmondson's going to be there. David Savard, of course, is going to be there. Ben Sherratt's going to be there. Alexander Romanov might play himself into a spot. But is Chris Weidman the 6th defenseman? Is Brett Kulak the 6th defenseman? Do they get somebody else? Who do you all think will make the top 6 defenseman list for the Montreal Canadiens this season?
Well, first of all, it's nice to know there's a young guy out there who still uses a notebook. Old guys stuck with them. I thought you young guys
never leave the crib without it. Never leave the crib without it.
Anyway, as you say, Petry, Edmondson, Savard, and Sherratt are the 4 guarantees. I'm thinking it makes sense to have Romanov and Kulak as your 3rd pairing because they were the 3rd pairing at the end of the playoffs last season, the Stanley Cup final. I thought they played well together after being healthy scratches for most of the playoffs, especially Romanov. Romanov obviously has to earn the trust of Dominic Ducharme and the coaching staff. They obviously didn't have it in the playoffs last year since he was a healthy scratch for so long. Romanov, obviously, he has the talent to be a top 4 defenseman. Whether the Canadiens are going to give him the opportunity to do that, we'll find out. I wonder about David Savard playing against top 6 forwards on the other team. In Tampa, he was on the 3rd pairing with Sergachev. He's a physical presence, but not the fastest guy out there. Matthias Norlinder is the guy who's the question mark coming into training camp. Left-hand shot, but he can play both sides. Smooth player. There's not much offense on the blue line right now apart from Petry, so he's the guy who could add offense definitely. And then Chris Weidman, another player that Bergevin picked up in the offseason, who I imagine will be the odd man out as a 7th defenseman. But it's one of the things that will be interesting to watch in training camp, and especially with Norlinder, watching him in the rookie camp. You can see why the Canadiens are high on him. He's really smooth with the puck. He can carry the puck up. He was on the power play at rookie camp and looked good at that. So I think Norlinder, if he doesn't make the Canadiens, he has to go back to Sweden. So I think the Canadiens are going to give him every opportunity to show what he can do. But after what happened to Jesperi Kotkaniemi, are they going to be more hesitant? Although Norlinder's 21. Kotkaniemi was only 18 when he started in the NHL, and Norlinder's played a couple of seasons of pro hockey. So he's more ready to make the jump to the NHL now than probably Kotkaniemi was at 18.
Yeah, I agree. I want to see the youth movement when it comes to some of the defensemen. Let Alexander Romanov really sort of grow into himself. For last year, it was kind of start and stop all the time with him, that I think Dominic Ducharme needs to have more trust in him. And if he does make mistakes, well, you got to live with it. That's the only way that you're going to learn how to play this game. And Norlinder is the player that I want to see what he can do at the NHL level. I think this would be a great opportunity for him. He's been the name from the rookie camp, and he'll probably be the name throughout the preseason that everyone is going to be focusing on. Another player on the defense was Josh Brook, who I was wondering what he would be like. He is injured, so I don't really know if we will see much of him. But I would like there to be more of a youth movement when it comes to filling in the 6 spots on the defense.
And personally, I would love to see in the 5-6 Romanov right in there, with the possibility of even moving up the ladder. Kulak, is proven that he's able to play, but we touched on Norlinder a little bit, and from what I'm hearing and reading about, and again, it's remains to be seen. Is here's a young kid, 21 years old, that's got tremendous upside from what the scouting staff have said, with a good power play guy, really good vision, very, very mobile, but on the downside, I guess his defensive game struggles a little bit, which has to be a concern. But I think that the main point here is you've got to handle these guys in a good way to allow them to develop, especially the young guys on the blue line. But they have to play, and they have to be given opportunities. So I think it's going to be interesting in the camp to see how those new kids, if you will, handle themselves, and see if they can contribute in a very positive way. But I know that it's quite a big step for Norlinder to step in and make an immediate impact. But time will tell. I mean, he has the skill set from what I understand, that he can be a player, but let's see how the camp goes. And let's give these kids opportunity to play in a lot of different situations without shaking their confidence, and let them develop through parts of the game that they will make mistakes, but put them back out there and let them have an opportunity to move forward and be good NHL players.
Yeah, at some point you have to have some trust in the kids and throw them in the deep end and see how they swim. Romanov, they brought him into the bubble 2 seasons ago in Toronto to gain experience, and then when the playoffs started last year, he didn't play after playing almost every regular season game. So, I can see Romanov, if they're willing to trust him, possibly moving up to the second pairing, maybe with Sherrod. I think Petrie and Edmondson are proven pair from last season. I don't think you want to break those guys up. But again, I think at some point you got to, let your kids show what they can do and allow them to make some mistakes and learn from them without worrying that every time you make a mistake, you're going to end up in the press box as a healthy scratch.
And, in today's game, the defense are big time part of the offense, and you got to have some guys that can skate, and they have some young kids that can skate and, can develop into pretty good two-way type defensemen. And let's give them a chance and let them develop, because they have some great upside, each and every one of them in the organization.
I like all these answers coming in, and I like the support for the younger players. Of course, they have to be ready to do so. Also, a player comparable that I keep hearing all the time with Matthias Norlinder, PK Subban. Really interesting that his name keeps coming up with him. Let's get to our last question here on this episode of Hockey Inside Out. We have to think about the fact that there's no captain. There's no interim captain. It doesn't look as if the Canadiens are going to announce one. Shea Weber, who it looks as if is not going to be playing for the foreseeable future, doesn't look as if his C will be replaced. But I don't know if anyone saw, but there's a photo going around from the Canadiens media day earlier this week. I saw some of the players were taking photos with like a green screen. They were showing it on their Twitch stream. And I think Nick Suzuki had an A on his jersey. I don't think I'm blind. I think I saw a 14 and an A. And hey, maybe the Canadiens will announce their leadership team at some point during training camp. And hey, if Nick Suzuki is worthy of getting an A, maybe it's a preseason thing. Who knows? But that looked really, really interesting to me, on top of the fact that the Canadiens are probably not going to have someone wearing a C for the foreseeable future. Is that a good idea? Is that a bad idea? What do you all think of this?
For me, I think it's a good move by Bergevin by not announcing an interim captain. Again, I don't totally believe that Shea Weber is finished. I don't know anything more than what anybody else hears, bits and pieces. But I'm hoping that Shea Weber is going to take this time and recover from all of his problem areas, and with time he's going to be able to maybe make a return. And I'm thinking that is the heart of the issue here. Is Bergevin is maybe, as much as he's saying one thing that he's done, I think he's leaving the window of opportunity that maybe there's a slight chance that Shea Weber will step back in later on in the year. And I think a lot of people would be really hopeful to see something like that happen, providing that it's not, not destroying some of his health issues.
Yeah, well, Bergevin and Ducharme have both made it clear that they're not going to name another interim captain to replace Weber this season. As Marc Bergevin said, nobody can replace Shea Weber and what he brings into the room. And Shea Weber's name was on the list of players invited to camp. And it's going to be interesting to see if Shea Weber is around the team this season, even though he's not playing, or if he's going to stay back home in BC. I imagine he probably will be around the team. I'm just speculating at this point. We'll find out as training camp moves forward. You got to also remember Paul Byron, an assistant captain, is out until January. At least that's what the Canadiens are saying. So that's one less guy wearing the A. You have Gallagher and Petrie, assistant captains. It makes sense to me to put an A on Nick Suzuki's shirt. He's the future of this team. It'll give him a little bit more of a leadership role, a little bit more of a voice in the room. And to me, it makes total sense. You're not throwing a C on him. To me, the next captain should be Brendan Gallagher, without a doubt. But this it gives Suzuki more of a voice in the room, I think. It shows the support the team has in him and the faith they have in him, not only as a player, but as a person. And it's been sort of fun watching Suzuki since he joined the team grow into the player and the person he is now, because when he first came here, Jess, you might remember this from interviewing, he was so shy.
Yes.
He was so shy when you interviewed him. It was like he was afraid he was going to say something wrong or didn't know what to say. He was sort of like a deer in the headlights. And he got better as that came along and got more open. I mean, last season we weren't in the room, so we don't know how much further he's advanced. But he seemed much more comfortable in his environment in the Canadiens locker room. And if they do indeed put an A on his sweater, I think that'll even increase that comfort level and just show him a real vote of confidence in him as far as moving forward with this team and how important his role is on this team. And when you speak with him, he's an intelligent kid. He's got a good heart. He's smart on the ice. He's smart off the ice. I think he's a kind of young guy. When he speaks up, I think players, including the veterans, will listen to him.
I think there's a simple answer to this thing is that he just had Thomas Plekanec's jersey on. That's what it was, number 14.
That's
and
also very fair.
They threw it on him. But no, who knows what's going to happen when it comes to who's going to be the leadership group on this team. I think it's just they don't want to, we haven't heard from Shea Weber. And I think that's done on purpose because I don't think he really knows what his future holds. And if the Canadiens name an interim captain, I think that kind of closes the door to Shea Weber coming back, because then if he were to come back, you have to change over the captaincy and there's going to be questions about that there. But I'm hopeful that Shea Weber at one point will be able to come back, but they've got a great group of younger players that can step up. And if Nick Suzuki is going to be the next one to kind of join that leadership group, I think it's really great.
Yeah, Shea Weber would be happy if he never had to speak to the media. It is going to be interesting to see if he does at some point speak to let us know, what he went through last season and what his thoughts are moving forward. Right now, I don't know if he will. I mean, he probably won't.
And he probably doesn't really know where all of these things are going to take him. We hear little bits and pieces about the injuries, but how severe are they? Are they something that could bother him for the rest of his life? These are parts and pieces that only Shea Weber knows, and we obviously hope that quality of life is really important, and he'll make a decision for himself and his family that makes the most sense.
I agree with you, Rick. I think he doesn't even know what the future holds for him. He might spend the year not playing and enjoy the time with his family and his wife and kids and say, I don't need this anymore. Or he might say, man, I miss this, and if I'm healthy again, I want to come back. But kudos to Shea Weber. I thought he played the best hockey during his 5 seasons in Montreal during the playoffs, and to know the pain that he was going through and what he went through just to get ready to play the games is remarkable. And the way he performed, boy, oh boy, that was an impressive performance by him in the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, I said we had a lot of topics to cover on this week's edition of Hockey Inside Out. Shea Weber, training camp, Carey Price, top 6 defenseman, Alexander Romanov's name being mentioned, even some love for Matthias Norlinder. Pretty happy with all the different topics that we covered. Thank you, Rick, Jess, and Stu, for being on with myself to talk Montreal Canadiens hockey. And thank you at home for watching. That'll do it for this week's edition of Hockey Inside Out. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you have not already done so. Visit hockeyinsideout.com for more articles, more episodes as well, and other great content. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the Hockey Inside Out newsletter. MontrealGazette.com/newsletters is where you can go to subscribe.